it's only us guys on defense that want to keep running the same defenses over and over. But one week you might get the wing T. Next week you might get a bear. Next week you might get a read option team. Next week you might get an air raid team. This will happen. You are watching and listening to the Indy Drills Podcast. I'm your host, Chad Wilson, owner of All Eyes DB Camp and author of 101 DB Tips. We talk about pass coverage, defensive backs, and a lot of things defense here on the show. 95% it is the guys in the back half, but we'll dabble into other areas here on the show. If this is your first time here with us, happy to have you here. If you're a regular, I really, really appreciate your support and hope that you continue to keep coming here and supporting the Indy Drills Podcast. Coming up on the show today, some face-to-face and fisticuffs. Things get a little chippy in the NFL. The NFL also ranked the top 10 shutdown corners for 2025. I'll give you a brief part of that list. We'll talk about that on the show today. There's a certain thing we're just not doing in press coverage, and this is at all levels. We're going to talk about that today. Of course, there is the user question. I've got that out there. We'll answer that for you. And then finally, a little bit of an appeal to my coaches out there, just a little something for you to put in your pipe and smoke it. As my grandma used to say. Not a smoker, though. Very religious woman. Nevertheless, let's jump into things here. The biggest news involving a defensive back out of Week 11 in the NFL was the dust-up between Jalen Ramsey and Jamar Chase. There were so many opinions on what went on there. At the end of the day, let's just start from the bottom, brass tacks. You can't spit on another man, okay? That's the biggest form of disrespect. And that is what happened with Jamar Chase. I knew something had to set Jalen Ramsey off. He's a guy that talks a lot out there on the field. He'll definitely chop it up with a wide receiver. I don't even know how him and DK Metcalf exist on the same football team. I guess they've put their differences aside for the greater good of team. But he's definitely a guy that will talk a lot. And I was just sitting there during the game as this was going on, trying to figure out, well, what could Jamar Chase say to a Jalen Ramsey that would get him to that point? We do remember early Jalen Ramsey getting so far under A.J. Green's skin that A.J. Green ended up putting him in a sleeper hold out there in the field. And A.J. Green is not a guy that's like that. So it is more likely that Jalen Ramsey would be the guy to say something to get under someone's skin than vice versa. Now, Jalen Ramsey's had his fair share of back and forths with guys. He even had a back and forth with another defensive back. Do we remember him and Marcus Peters after Marcus Peters went to the Ravens and Jalen Ramsey was on the Rams? That was definitely fun theater. Jalen Ramsey is entertaining, if nothing else. But nevertheless, these two guys went at it on several occasions during the game, and the final one resulted in Jalen punching Jamar Chase in the helmet, not once but twice, and getting ejected from the football game. And as it turns out, Jamar Chase did indeed spit on Jalen Ramsey, despite his denials of doing so after the game. So that was definitely a bad look for Jamar. First the spit, and then, staring into cameras and saying that he did not do that. In this day and age, if you did something on a football field, it was probably seen by somebody. In the early days, they'd have one or two cameras out there filming the action on the football field. Now, on top of the 10 cameras that the network has out there with all types of angles from everywhere. They have a pylon cam, for crying out loud. Everyone has cameras in their pocket by way of the phones and will film anything, especially when two very prominent guys in the NFL are having an issue out on the field. Everyone's whipping out a camera. Someone's going to catch it. And indeed, that's what ended up happening. Apparently, a reporter for the Cincinnati Bengals, a local beat reporter for the Bengals, caught the action, posted it on Twitter, for which he did catch some heat. No doubt about that. You guys out there could tell me how you feel about that. Is it Was it right for a Cincinnati beat reporter to kind of out Jamar Chase on that? Or could he have just seen that happen on his camera and sit on it and maybe just let Jamar Chase go with his saying that he didn't spit on it? What do you guys think out there? Let me know down there in the comments. But at the end of the day, you can't spit on another man, and it's very difficult to ask a player to just let something like that go. I mean, damn, that could have hit him in the mouth. All right, so I side with Jalen Ramsey on this one. However, throughout the game, he was throwing some shots out there. So it was obvious that something was lingering from the first matchup. If you remember, Jalen Ramsey had a tough time both with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in that first game that the Bengals ended up winning on a thriller on a Thursday night. Let's just be honest. Him and Slay did not cover very well in that game, so I'm sure there were some lingering feelings there. And who knows, Chase may have said some things early on in the game, letting him know. I mean, after all, Jalen, that was one of the last few games where we saw Jalen Ramsey full-time at cornerback. By the way, he looks very good at safety. Physical, smart, definitely looking the part there at that position. And there's nothing wrong with a guy this long in the league moving inside. That's happened to a lot of great defensive backs in this league. Rod Woodson ended up doing it. Charles Woodson did it. So there's nothing wrong with that. Jalen Ramsey's been in the league for quite some time. Father Time catches up to all of us. He may have lost a step on reflexes, just flat out running, whatever the case may be. But he's still an intelligent player who's always been one of the better tackling DBs in the league. So he looks quite fine sliding inside. So, but he did deliver a couple of late blows in that game that might have fueled the fire to what eventually happened. But nevertheless, Ramsey gets kicked out of the game. Jamar Chase gets kicked out of an entire football game. He's going to miss the next football game. It's under appeal, but as it stands, a game check is $458,000, I think, for Jamar Chase that he's going to have to forfeit, along with another bonus of $50-something thousand. So that ended up being a $500,000 spit. I would dare say that's not worth it. I don't care how much you're making, which I think Jamar Chase is making $35-40 million a year. I still say $500,000 donated back to the NFL is not going to be worth it. I don't think there's anything out on the field that's going to be worth it for that. I might live long enough to see where I might have to change my mind on that. Nevertheless, back to real football stuff. The NFL.com recently ranked the top 5 or top 10, let me say, shutdown cornerbacks for 2025. I'm going to give you guys the top 5. You guys tell me down in the comment section whether or not you agree or disagree with this. Feel free to let me know. If you guys are just listening to this on your streaming device, enjoy the list. I think if you are on it's not Apple Podcasts, but if you're on Anchor, you do have the ability to drop a comment there, so you may want to do that. Number 1 on the list is Patrick Surtain, too. I don't think there'll be a lot of disagreements there. He's really catapulted himself to the top of the cornerback list of guys currently playing in the league right now. Some hardcore fans of other teams may want their guy there, but, just in general, I think there shouldn't be a lot of disagreement there. Number 2 is Trent McDuffie, definitely a solid defensive back. They're saying he's number 2 on the list. Number 3 is Quinyon Mitchell for the Philadelphia Eagles. Number 4 will probably be some debate. Basically, I'm saying that off of all of the hate and words that were said when he was recently traded. But number 4, according to the NFL, is Sauce Gardner. And number 5 is Diamador Lenore, a guy that's probably underrated, even though he just got a nice contract a couple years ago with the San Francisco 49ers. Probably an underrated player there. But that's the top 5 out of that list. You guys drop me a comment down below. Let me know how you feel about that. Moving right along into topic number 1 on the show today. I want to talk about this because I'm watching film each and every week. And what I'm starting to see is there is just this lost art of using our hands in press coverage. You will hear fans complain about this. You might hear people from the old school of football complaining about this. Well, no one's using their hands. There was a time where I was saying there was a gap in the wide receivers and the defensive backs. I will admit there was a little period of time where wide receivers really accelerated their skill level and knowledge of getting free at the line of scrimmage, and the defensive backs were kind of held in they were kind of stuck in a mode of really only being able to deal with a receiver that came straight off of the line of scrimmage, which is, in the early stages of press man coverage is what a lot of receivers would do. They just didn't have the know-how, the skill level to go laterally and, use some shimmy off that line of scrimmage. There'd only be a handful of wide receivers that would know how to move laterally, to move a defensive back and manipulate them to get free off of the line of scrimmage and avoid the hands of the DB. There was a gap in time with that. But since then, the defensive backs have made up that gap and have now learned how to use their feet with kick slides and motor techniques and inch techniques. We've upgraded our packages of defense at the line of scrimmage. No more just standing there flat-footed and waiting for the guy to run into you and put hands on him. We've learned how to move with that lateral movement. What I'm starting to see now is the gap widening again, because with all of our skill development and our IQ knowledge on moving laterally to widen releases, we have forgotten to use our hands in the press man coverage. So what I'm seeing are guys doing a good job of mirroring releases and staying in front of wide receivers. But what's happening is wide receivers are closing the DB's cushion in press, getting on his toes, and then exiting. And because DBs are not using their hands in press anymore because they're overly now concerned about their feet, once that receiver exits their frame after having stepped on their toes, we are immediately in chase mode. And that's not where we want to be. When we're in chase mode during a route in press man, we have to run at that receiver's speed. And God forbid if that receiver happens to be faster than us, we're in a whole lot of trouble. We're just, not going to be all too smooth there. Number one, if he's going deep, there's a good chance we're going to get left. Or B, we're going to be so out of control chasing a guy that we think or know is faster than us. Anything that he runs short is probably going to be open because he's under control and we're not. So the idea is to be able to exit and at least be in phase with the wide receiver, or hopefully work it top down, depending on the coverage, of course. But we're losing the ability to do that because we're not using our hands. There's a certain amount of space. I'll just do it like this. I'm assuming a bunch of you guys have learned how to play off man coverage. And if you have, and your coach or trainer or whoever has taught you, they tell you that at a certain point, that wide receiver is going to break your cushion and you're going to have to open up. Stop. You didn't have all the interceptions that you wanted to have this year. So how are we going to fix that problem? I've got two great resources for you. First is my book, 101 DB Tips, chock full of information and tips for you to get your hands on that pigskin. Everything from how to train, how to play man coverage, how to play zone coverage, and a whole lot more. Plus, the All Eyes DB Camp members area breaks down coverages for you, technique, quizzes, all kinds of great things in there that's going to up your knowledge, that's going to get your hands more times on the football this year. Check them out. I have a link in the description down below. They tell you, don't let that wide receiver step on your toes and off man and then exit. The reason for that is obvious. You're just going to end up being in chase mode. He's going to blow by you, and now you're going to be chasing after a guy, and you're going to have to hope for a bad pass or something of that nature. Well, the same applies in the press man coverage. If you allow that wide receiver to get on your toes before he exits, it's going to be the same as what would happen if you were an off man and you let that happen. So how do we combat it in press? In off man, we open and run because that's just what we do. There's a certain amount of speed that's been built up both by him and by you in your pedal. But when we're in press, opening up is not what we want to do. It's using our hands. It's using, if the wide receiver is right in front of us, a two-hand jam, or if he's off to the side of us, using our offhand as he exits to try and get some control of him and keep him underneath us. And so many guys are losing that ability. And I'm seeing this at all levels. I'm not just talking to high school and college guys. This is happening in the NFL as well. So I think players, as they go about training and doing their press work, they really have got to start implementing more usage of their hands. They've got to get back to doing that. I've got a number of great drills involving the use of the hands, both with a partner, if you happen to have one as you're training, or without a partner, a couple of solo drills that you can do. And those are available in the All Eyes DB Camp members area drill library, which is pretty extensive now. I continue to grow that. So there's a link to the members area down in the description below. But you've got to start incorporating those. Now, I've been guilty of it in the past when we were in that gap where receivers were getting really skilled at moving laterally and getting away from the jams at the line of scrimmage in an effort to try and get guys hurried up, in hurry up the skill level and the knowledge to combat that. A lot of what I did in training was strictly using the feet and maybe less with the hands. Now, I've always been a guy that would include something with the hands, as opposed to maybe some other coaches who would just not do any of that at all, considering the era that I came up in and how I learned how to play press man. There was always going to be something involving the hands in press coverage, but I was doing less of it than I should have. In recent years, I've really gotten back to using those hands again, just to combat some of what's going on mentally for defensive backs and just to respond to what's happening on the receiver side. And a lot of what we do on defense is reactive, whether we like that or not. So if you aren't quick in catching up with the developments, the things that receivers are doing and offenses are doing to get open and win, if you don't respond to that stuff quickly, you can get owned. And I want to respond to this quickly. So if you're a DB out there listening to this, watching this, or you're a coach out there listening or watching this, I'm here to tell you, you've got to get back to pretty fast. Get back to getting your guys to use their hands in press coverage. So how do we do this? Just about every training session that you have, or just about every practice that you have, and you're going over press man, be sure that you're including something with using the hands. If your individual time is too short, like it is for so many defensive back coaches, you're going to have to assign some homework to your guys. So you get them to stay after practice and do some drills with using their hands. Again, I've got a number of great drills in the All Eyes DB Camp members area that you can use, but you assign that to your players, especially your cornerbacks, after practice, and they'll spend 10 minutes doing that. But they've got to practice it so that it's readily available in their minds when they are in competition, aka games, and need to use it. Because these receivers are, first they got skilled at getting lateral. Now they've gotten skilled at closing the cushion and space between you. They're not paying any price for that because we're not putting hands on them. And then their next step is even with us as they're facing up the field and we're facing down the field. And that's putting too many guys in chase mode. I'm seeing guys do a really good job of mirroring at the line of scrimmage and still losing the rep because the space between them got violated. So I think the overarching theme of this segment right here and the topic that I'm talking about here is you've got to get back to using your hands. You've got to start doing some drills, coaches, players, with using your hands in press. And I don't mean lazy jams. I mean strong jams where the receiver is affected by your hands being put on him. All right. That's the other thing that I'm seeing. When we are using our hands, it's very passive. We're just resting our hands on the receiver to kind of hope that he'll allow the hands to stay there and, he'll guide us to the top of the route and, just let it sit there. Well, these guys are also swatting your hands off and we're losing there as well. So you've got to affect them with the jams, whether it's a two-hand or an offhand jam, they've got to feel it, okay? There's got to be a price paid for getting too close to you. The final thing that I want to say here is I always try and give guys a visual as I'm training them. And one of the visuals is, man, if you're in a boxing ring and you're going against a guy, I don't think you would let your opponent get all the way up in your face in a boxing match without doing something. All right. It's why boxers must learn a jab. It's to keep their opponent at a certain careful distance away from them. This is what you need as a DB that's playing press man. If you don't learn how to have a stiff jab stiff jams, that opponent's going to be able to get into your space and could deal you a knockout blow. So if there's something you want to keep in your head as DBs in press coverage, I need you to keep that in your head. What would you be doing in a boxing ring if you were in it with that wide receiver in front of you? Would you let him get this close? Would you let him get all the way up to your face before he does something? I don't think that you would, or the turnout would be pretty bad for you in the ring, as it will be out on the field. So, we're heading into the off season. Guys are going to these camps, and you're going to be going to 7-on-7s and all that. There'll be a ton of 1-on-1s at those camps that you're going to where you want to impress a coach. And if they're allowing you to press, you would do yourself well to not allow wide receivers to just close the cushion on you. They're slowly and secretly, this is what they're doing, and they're attacking us, and they're winning doing that. So we need to do something quick, fast, and a hurry about that. So let's get back to using our hands in training so that we can do it in practice and start changing the shape of these routes, start affecting the receivers, and now they'll have to go back to the drawing board and figure something else out. But the time is now for us to start making that move of using our hands once again to disturb the wide receiver's route. All right, time now for a user question. If you have a question about football, about me, or anything of that nature, about coverage, strategy, technique, my past coaching, playing, et cetera, feel free to drop that in the comment section down below. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube, that's the best way for that question to get answered. If you're listening to this on a streaming device, you can send your question to cwilson@alliesdbcamp.com. Again, that's cwilson@alliesdbcamp.com. I'll be more than happy to answer it for you. If I really, really love the question or it fits some theme that I have going on, I may be reading your question on the next Indy Drills podcast. So that's how you get a question sent in to me for this show. This week's question comes from Diedrich in Orlando. He says, my coach is moving me to defensive back next season, and I'm going to start working on it during the 7-on-7 season. What's the most important thing for me to know? All right, Diedrich, good question. And this is going to be a lot of guys across the country. In high school football, there's thousands of schools. There's 1 million high school football players every year. And I'm not just, saying that. It's not hyperbole. It's not just a number I'm throwing out there. Every year, there's slightly over 1 million high school football players participating in the country. With that being the case, many guys are making a move from one side of the ball to the other, and a good portion of that are going to be guys moving from offense over to defense. First of all, Diedrich, welcome to the dark side. We love having you here, and I hope you become an avid watcher of the Indy Drills podcast, because this is going to be a great resource for you going forward. I don't want to just give you one thing. I'm going to give you 3 things, with the most important thing being the first, and that is learn the defenses. All right. You're not going to be very effective on this side of the ball if you don't understand where you need to be. Matter of fact, you won't get on the field if you don't understand where you need to be. The number one thing for you to get on the field, the minimal thing you need to survive out there and be someone that can be relied upon by the coaches, is to understand the defense. Not only your job in the defense, but what everyone else around you is doing. This is something I really do preach on. So not just for guys that are now moving to defense, but any of you guys that are fairly new to defense, football in general, that are playing in the secondary. It's one thing to know your job. That's only half the battle. You will not be an effective player if you don't understand what everyone else around you is doing. And the reason I say that is, yes, you may know your job, but you can get fooled out of what your job is as the action starts to unfold if you're not clear as to what the safety's doing on this play, what the linebacker closest to you is doing, and just how the whole thing fits together. You may know that you have a deep third, but a route flashes in front of you that's not in the deep third, and if you don't understand who has that, you might get fooled. You can get fooled into thinking, I don't know if there's another route going behind me. Who has this route? No one has it. Maybe I should go get that. That's the kind of stuff that'll happen in your head, and it'll happen at light speed. Guys are running at you full speed. When you get out there on the field, it is happening so fast, and it only takes a moment for you to have that flash in your head as to who has that, and to pause, for a route to get behind you, the ball to get thrown, and it to get completed. All right, to cause a first down, a big play, et cetera, et cetera. If you understand that I have a deep third, the flat is being handled by the linebacker, and a curl route might be handled by another linebacker or by the safety to my side, you don't give a second thought as to a route going into the flat or a route going into the curl. You don't bother with that because you know, all right? And you just make whatever your communication is in, China, whatever. And those are probably new terms to you. So part of understanding the defense is knowing the terminology, find those words, get definitions for those words, ask your coach or ask a player, get definitions for the words and terminology that is being used by your coach or that you see in the playbook. That's super important. Words matter when it comes to your defenses, your playbook, etc. Don't just skip over a word and not know. You see something in there you don't understand, ask a question, find out what it means. But if you know who's in that flat, you don't get fooled by a route going in the flat when you've got the third. If you know who's supposed to be in the curl, you don't get fooled by that. If you know where your help is, that your help is in the post, you don't find yourself trying to jump inside on a route when you know there's a help right there in the post and give up something to the outside, perhaps. So not only know your job, get a total understanding. That's number one. Number two is train your eyes to be disciplined. I named my company All Eyes DB Camp for a reason, because the eyes are the most important part of playing this position. Your eyes, when you're in press, are used to focus on the wide receiver's hips. If you move your eyes from that, you're probably going to get fooled on a route and give up a catch. If you are in zone and there's a read that you're supposed to make, a lot of coverages now have you reading the next player inside, the next receiver inside. If you're not reading that, you're going to miss that read. You're going to end up on the wrong person in the wrong zone, give up a play, bust the coverage if your eyes aren't where they need to be. If you need to be reading the end man on the line of scrimmage for pass and run, not having him there means, a pass might get off without you seeing or understanding it, or you might be late on, providing, run support. And you're a guy that's supposed to be a primary run support guy. You've got to read that end man on the line of scrimmage. And if you're supposed to be reading the quarterback, which is such a great key, being able to read him. If you're not really truly focused on that quarterback, you're going to be late on everything. So he's going to get that throw off. It's going to get into the receiver's hands, and you're just going to find yourself showing up late a lot. So really train your eyes to be disciplined. And the best way really to do that is keep a constant focus on it. Your eyes are going to determine a lot of the other things that come with playing defensive back. Good eyes usually lead to good feet, which usually lead to good position on everything. So the first thing you need to be aware of out on the field are what your eyes are doing. Make it a focus for you, especially in practice and training, as to what your eyes are doing, especially in drills. Don't have lazy eyes in drills because it gets hard to correct it down the road. And then the final thing is learn to love studying the quarterback. All right. This game is all about quarterbacks these days. We see who makes all the money at the NFL level. We see all the guys that get the glory at the high school and college level, and that's for a reason. Those are the generals on the field. They're the ones that make the offense go. And so if you learn to love studying the quarterbacks, you can pick up their tendencies, you could learn their strengths, their weaknesses, and just being able to understand that going into games is going to allow you to anticipate certain things happening. If you know there's certain throws he doesn't like to make, can't make, you can kind of eliminate them out of your process as the play is unfolding or, pre-snap. If you understand the places that he likes, the routes he likes to throw, the guys he likes to throw to, then you can get really good at anticipating and perhaps turn into someone down the road who can jump some routes simply because you have a total understanding of the guy that's handling that football and running the offense on the other side. Truly developing a love of studying quarterbacks while you're playing defense is going to be a superpower for you down the road. So I'm, assuming, Diedrich, you're in high school. I'm making that assumption. Or maybe you're in youth football, which would be even better. If you develop that love early, I promise you it's going to pay off for you down the road, provided that you are, of the physical stature and skills to continue moving through this game. Having a love for understanding the quarterbacks and figuring them out and just dissecting what it is that they do is going to pay off for you and turn you into a playmaker down the road. All right. So, Diedrich, those are the three things. Learn the defenses, fully and totally everyone's job on defense, or at the very least, everyone in the secondary or in coverage around you. Train your eyes to be disciplined, and finally learn to love studying the quarterback. Those three things are going to pay off for you quick, fast, and in a hurry as you move over to defensive back. All right. Great question. Once again, for you guys out there that also want to potentially have me read a question from you on the Indy Drills podcast, drop your question in the comment section down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to this on a streaming device, send your question to cwilson@alleyeasdbcamp.com. All right, moving right along to the final topic today. And this one is primarily for coaches. And the title here is "You Can't Keep Cooking Out of the Cookbook." So I don't know how many of my coaches out here, because I've got a large male dominated audience, but let me not make any assumptions. Perhaps some of you cook. If not, we all eat. We've all eaten the food from mom, grandma, etc., etc. And maybe mom or grandma at one point cooked out of a cookbook. Maybe grandma gave mom a cookbook, but grandma doesn't really cook out of that cookbook anymore, okay? Mom will, because mom's kind of new to this thing. She's figuring things out and she needs things measured. X amount of, salt here, X amount of, garlic spice here, and X amount of flour here, et cetera, et cetera. If mom is going to become the kind of cook that grandma is, the faster she can get around to being able to kind of eyeball how much of the ingredients need to be put into whatever the recipe is, and not have to measure everything, and what she can substitute in when a certain ingredient is not available, that's going to accelerate mom's greatness as a cook if she's cooking from grandma's cookbook. So what am I talking about, Chad? For God's sakes, this is a DB show. Why are we talking about food all of a sudden, outside of the fact that we all eat? Is that I see this happen with coaches. I've witnessed this many times during my coaching career, and I'm still seeing it now that I have moved to off the field and consulting for both players and coaches. Is that I get it. When you're a new coach, you definitely should go out and try to, up your knowledge. So you go to those clinics, definitely a great thing to do. But guys are going to clinics and you are learning a specific defense. All right. You found a defense that it is that you like, that you want to go and run. And you go to a clinic and you sit in there, and you go to all of the clinics that are teaching quarters coverage, right? Because everyone's running quarters now. I'm not going to go into another diatribe about quarters. I think it's been established how I feel about that coverage. But nevertheless, you guys will go in there and you'll, watch or go to the clinic and take notes. Parents, dads out there, if you're trying to get your kid to the next level, you're trying to get him to the level of elite skills, you've got to use these resources that I have available to you. One is my book, 101 DB Tips. It's the greatest book out there for DBs. Everything on covering man, playing zone, playing corner, playing safety, how to study film. It's an excellent resource for your young tyke that's trying to become a big-time DB. Also, the All Eyes DB Camp members area is a superpower. Over 200 videos in there on all types of things like how to play coverages, technique, strategy breakdowns, and more. Two great resources for your young guy if you're trying to get him to the next level. Take advantage of them. Link down in the description below. Which is fine, especially early on in your career. But my appeal to you guys, my plea to you all, is as fast as you can, start tailoring that defense to your mentality, but also your talent and what is available to you in terms of talent on your team, as well as what you are getting in your particular league, conference, whatever. Be able to survive outside of those notes or the playbook that you got that you're trying to coach out of. Because there are going to be some times where you don't have those ingredients. On top of that, there are some things that are going to happen to you in games where you're going to need answers. The essence of coordinating, especially as a defensive coordinator, is solving problems. And if you just resign yourself to coaching out of that cookbook, coaching out of that playbook, I guarantee you things are going to happen to you where you don't have the answer in that playbook. I can assure you of that, where you're just not going to have the answers. And if you don't start learning how to tailor things and come up with your own solutions and modify and tweak things to what it is that you have, you're going to find yourself in a lot of games without solutions, and you're just going to get handled. I'm bringing this up because I've witnessed this plenty of times. I've seen coordinators just get right deep into a hole. A team is doing something to them that has not been covered in that playbook. You don't have any notes on it from the clinic. It's not in any of the pages of the playbook that you downloaded on the internet that you thought was going to be the greatest thing. And you're just getting your rear end handled. Some coach came up with some formation, or they're getting some player the ball, or there's some particular play. And if you can't operate outside of the confines of that playbook or the clinic notes, you're going to be mediocre. Your players are going to be out there frustrated, and you're just going to give up the goods and get handled. So I would stress this to guys. You don't have to run that defense exactly the way that you see it in that playbook. It's a great starting place. But as you move along, start tweaking a little bit, and tweaking has so many meanings. But in this particular case, start adding some tweaks to your defense, start modifying it to your players, start finding ways to make full use of guys' talents. That includes your better players that are out on the field, along with guys that are reserves that can be used and don't necessarily need to be sitting on your sidelines for an entire football game. There's some guys out there that are really good pass rushers, but maybe not so good against the run. I think on third down, those guys should be in the game, and maybe you take out the run stopper. Maybe you rotate some defensive linemen. As I've talked about in the past, I used to have a package where I would take the defensive tackles out of the game. I'd move the defensive ends down inside. They were the defensive tackles, and I'd bring on a couple of really good pass rushers who were not maybe every down guys. But you've got to start doing these things and not just be out of that book, acting like, just understand, whoever made that playbook, they had to have made it originally. The author of that playbook had to have made that originally off of the talent that they had, wherever the place was that they were when they made that playbook. They're working off of that talent. Chances are you don't have that same talent. I see a lot of guys out there trying to run defenses that were very successful for someone else who had all of the ingredients for that defense to be successful. You might not have those ingredients. And that's what I was talking about when I mentioned in the beginning about the cookbook. All right. So you don't have salt. What can I substitute for salt and still have this recipe get off and have a great tasting meal? Same thing coaching on the field. Someone might have given you a defense where they had tremendous defensive ends. You don't have that so much. I've got maybe great defensive tackles. What am I going to do about that? What tweak can I make? All right. Make those adjustments on it. The other thing that's going to do is provide you with something different that the opposing team's offense has to prepare for. Rather than you and the 5 other guys they've faced this year all went to the same clinic, talked, and all heard the Saban system on quarters, and you're all running the Saban coverages. So that offensive coordinator has seen you. By the time he gets to you, the 5th game, he's seeing this for the 5th week in a row. The Saban family of coverages, you all went to the same clinic. You're all coaching out of that same playbook. You don't think he's going to have his way with you? All right, if he's seeing this for the 5th time in a row, it's the same rotations, the same coverages, the same blitzes, the same combination coverages, the same way to handle bunch, the same way you handle motion. He's an expert on your defense now. He might be more of an expert on your defense than you are at this point because everyone's running the same thing. So I'm appealing to you guys out there, the coaches that are watching this, to put your own signature on your defense. When I first started getting into coaching defenses, I came from the University of Miami. An older player that was at the park that I was at gave me one of our old playbooks because I didn't have one. I didn't keep a playbook when I left. He happened to have one, gave it to me. And I started off there. I started off with our 4-3 cover 2 playbook. That's what we ran certainly what he ran at the University of Miami. We started to change a little bit while I was there, but I started off there. My framework started there. But soon I realized I just can't keep running this. There's some tweaks that need to be made here. First of all, offenses were starting to change even down at the lower levels over what we saw back in the day. So started making some changes there. And then there were different challenges that I was facing. When you're coaching high school football, one thing that does happen is you see different offenses on a weekly basis. It's only us guys on defense that want to keep running the same defenses over and over. But one week you might get the wing T. Next week you might get a bear. Next week you might get a read option team. Next week you might get an air raid team. This will happen. I love that personally, but I would admit that if I kept seeing the same type of offense every week, it'd be a piece of cake. We'd just annihilate. I would have annihilated everyone. I did well for myself as a coordinator, but I would have really went crazy as a coordinator if I just kept seeing the same offense every week. And God forbid if we get in these games and I've just got better talent than you and I'm seeing this same offense for the 5th, 6th time. I mean, you'd struggle to get across midfield. But nevertheless, the different challenges that were coming my way needed tweaks. And then I personally just could not stand to know that I had talented players on the sidelines and they're just going to have to wait either for someone to get hurt or they might even be a freshman with some talent and they're just going to have to wait until this junior becomes a senior and then graduates and then you can get out there in the field. No, you have a talent that's unique. I'm going to use it, and maybe there's someone I pull out that I don't necessarily need on this particular play or on this particular situation right here. What I need to have happen, you are better at than this person, so we're just pulling you out. I'm not saying to rotate all of your players in there, but when you've got guys with unique talents and skill sets, put it to use. It does a lot for camaraderie. It does a lot to make it difficult for the offense to prepare when you're an army of 15, 16 guys as opposed to an army of just the same 11 guys all the time. These are the tweaks that I'm talking about you doing. So as we start to head into this offseason, and golly, that was fast. That's just my message to you guys. You're going to go to the clinics this year. Maybe you're downloading a couple playbooks or something like that. And if you're just starting out, it's, you're going to have to coach out of that playbook. But the sooner you can start adjusting to the talent that you have and the certain problems that you're going to be facing off of your schedule in your league, et cetera, the better off you're going to be. The more success you're going to have, the more difficult it's going to be for the offenses to prepare for you. You're talking to a guy who was on the offensive side, coached receivers, and was an offensive coordinator. When I went up against defense that was doing something that was a little different, it required a lot more time for me to prepare that week. And there was more of a chance that some mistakes might be made or that I would have a more difficult time if I'm seeing something for the first time this year, as opposed to seeing the same defense 3 weeks in a row. When I'm seeing that same defense for the 3rd time in a row, I had a pretty good time against it. All right. So just my message out there to you coaches, as you start to head into the offseason, you start thinking about what it is that you're going to do next season. Just something for you to consider. All right. Hope that helped you guys out. As always, on your way out, guys, whether you are a coach or a player or a trainer, you need a copy of this book right here, 101 DB Tips, over 100 of the best DB tips you're all going to get. You get the tip plus the explanations here below. And as a bonus, you get in the back here, I talked about terminology during this podcast, got over 100 passing terms. There's a glossary here at the back of the book. That alone makes this thing worth it, plus a page for notes. This is all in the soft cover version. There is an ebook version that gets delivered to you right away if you can't wait. But you don't get the 100 passing terms in the ebook. I just want to make that clear to people out there. There have been some questions about that, but this is definitely a great resource for you as you start to head into next season. Player, coach, parent, teacher, whoever. If it's about defensive back play, definitely a resource for you. I have a link to it down in the description below. I also mentioned the All Eyes DB Camp members area. I've had this for several years now, but a couple of years ago, I moved to a new platform. Absolutely unbelievable. Something I wish I would have had as a player, and definitely as a coach, wish I would have had that. Over 300 posts in there on strategy, technique. There's quizzes in there. I break down film. I'm starting to add a section in there on prospects, everything that you could want to up your knowledge of the game, improve your footwork. I have a full drill library in there, as I mentioned, everything that you need. So the book, All Eyes DB Camp members area, there's no way you're not a better player or coach next season. Also, a link to that down in the description below. If this helped you out, be sure to share it with a friend. Give it a like. I love the engagement. Drop some comments down for me. And, of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next Indy Drills podcast like this one. That's it for me. I'm out. As always, All Eyes DB Camp. Consistency breeds results.